one second. He says, would you rather a Spider trade or an OG trade? Keep in mind, OG would be way cheaper, and it would mean RJ moves back to the 2. So that leads us right into the next segment about potential targets the Knicks could pivot to if we're unable to secure a Donovan Mitchell deal. So there's been some rumblings about the Knicks potentially going after OG Anunoby, or even trying to pursue SGA and seeing if the Thunder would be willing to give up SGA and try to tank once again, seeing that Chet Holmgren has gone down with the Liz Frank fracture. So, Oxy, you look at these two players, you look at what OG Anunoby was able to do last season, as well as what SGA was able to do last season. What player do you think would be the best fit for the Knicks? You have, Anunoby, who's a wing, like Jesco mentioned, move RJ back to the 2, or you can go after a guy like SGA, who would once again put RJ at the 3, which would be similar to a Donovan Mitchell trade. But now we're targeting a shooting guard that has more so the prototypical size of a 2, coming in at 6'5", 6'6". So if you were to go, if you were in the GM chair, which one of these two would you pursue, if any?
It's a complicated question, only because if we're balking at, the amount of assets it would take to get Donovan Mitchell, it's going to take the same amount of assets to get SGA. He is absolutely a young, he's in his prime, young, don't go by, he shot 30% from 3, but he's a really good player, man. He's incredibly talented. He plays defense. So as we talked about Donovan, Carmelo was the 7th worst defensive player in the league. Donovan Mitchell was the 14th worst defensive player in the league. So we won't have that. SGA, he shot career-wise almost 35% from 3. So he had an off year, but 47% career from field goal percentage, and also 80% foul shooter. He's a quality player, but the funny part about it is that I did some research, and there was a trade package that before the Hawks got DeJounte Murray, they were thinking about getting SGA, and the trade was the Hawks get SGA and Ty Jerome, and the Thunder had to give up John Collins, Danilo Gallinari, Kevin Huerter, and multiple first-round picks. So it would be very, very expensive for us to get SGA, and I have no problem with us getting it, like you said, but he's not at the level of Donovan Mitchell in terms of his first years in the league, turning it on like that. But like you said, he's prototype size, the 6'6". It changes everything. OG is. There's a lot of similarity to what we talk about Cam. He's prototype size, 6'7". He has a 7'2.5" wingspan. So, as you see that from a career standpoint, 37% from 3, he shot 36 last year, 47% field goal percentage, career 70%. But the issue is injuries. I wouldn't touch him. He tore, in 2017, he was the number 23 draft pick because he tore his ACL. And, but if you think about it, he's had significant knee, hip, calf, appendix, hand injuries before turning 25 years old. Last year, the last couple of years, he's missed 50 games. So that's why they brought in Thad Young. Thaddeus Young at his, to try to, from a minutes management in Toronto. So I'm just worried with his muscle. He's very muscular. I just don't see him being a healthy guy. So on paper, hey, that's the 3 and D. But if you can't play, if you have hip, calf, hand injuries, and, the calf injury killed him almost all of last year. And he didn't play, if people remember, during the Kawhi run a couple of years ago because of an appendectomy. That's a basketball-related injury, but I would not get OG because of his injury history, man. Not at all.
Yeah, the thing is, both of these players, they are somewhat injury-prone. They've both dealt with injuries, especially over the last 2. But, I mean, if I were to pick Two, I really do like SGA as a player. I know somebody mentioned that he's not the most efficient scorer, and they pointed out the 3-point percentage. But I mean, that was a poor year of shooting for him. I think in the years previously, I mean, the 2 years prior, he shot right around 35 and 34%. So he can knock down the three. Not as good of a 3-point shooter, I believe, as a Donovan Mitchell, but he's still a player that can, create off the dribble, penetrate, and be a playmaker as well. He can look to score, and he can also look to find his teammates. So if we are able to go out there and bring in a guy that might be cheaper than Donovan Mitchell, like, I know you mentioned the deal that got rejected, but who knows? Maybe with Chet Holmgren injury, maybe the Thunder are looking to tank some more, and they'd be willing to lower their trade demands, and we can go out there and get him. So if we can get him for a package that was less than Donovan Mitchell, I would definitely go the SGA route as opposed to the OG Anunoby route.
Yeah, I can't see I can't see OKC doing it. If you look at their roster of, Holmgren obviously is out this year with the injury. Josh Giddey, you have Shea, but Poku, Dort, Ousmane Dieng is a project, Jalen Williams, Trey Mann, Aaron Wiggins, Derek Favors, Jeremiah. They don't have guys with trajectories to play at the level of SGA. Those guys are going to be good players, but I doubt any of them will be an all-star or at the level of SGA. So for them to give up a prize player like that would be like front office malpractice, as our good friend Ron Cleveland would say. Hey, shout out if Ron, you're listening. Saying prayers for you and your family. So I can't see how you can give up the only one good player on your team if you're okay.
I don't know, Boxer. You're saying that's the only good player? I mean, Josh Giddey has the ability to
he can't shoot for shit. Josh Giddey.
True, but there also are some reservations as to whether SGA and Giddey can play together. So maybe that might be an avenue that can force Presti to look to see if he can get a deal done. Now they don't have the time restraint or the they don't have training camp as something that can kind of force their hands. But if hypothetically, if they were willing to listen for a guy like SGA, and it would take a similar package to pry him from the Thunder that it would be to pry Mitchell from the Jazz, then I would definitely entertain that option.
Yeah, I hear you. Hey, quick shout out to Adele Chapman. Hope all is well with you and the family. Give little Avery, our princess, a kiss. So, so it's going to be interesting. I think as a front office, it would make sense that you have a contingency plan if Donovan Mitchell doesn't go through. But also, I think part of the contingency plan is sometimes the best move you make is the one you don't make. So let the kids play. And right now, folks, as it stands, based on Vegas, we're going to be picking in the same spot approximately as we picked last year. We picked at 11. So right now it's a 12, but it's probably around 10 to 13, and then 23 for the Dallas pick. So we're going to have 2 picks. But as we talked about, if you're not picking top 5, then you're picking pretty much another. If you get lucky, yeah, but your chances are very minute you're going to be picking another all-star at that level. So giving up assets for a player like if Presti does it, there's a lot more to his game, I think, that could, and especially with a Tibbs and an RJ and stuff like that. So SGA would be really nice, and it's crazy to think that we could have had him in the first place if we drafted right.
Exactly.